Something very unusual just happened to me. I woke up this morning to an email with the subject line, "Plain, low luxury, request for immediate takedown of the video." Once I wiped the gunk out of my eyes and cleared my head, I took a closer look. It's an email from an Italian lawyer purportedly representing Philipp Plein, something I have no reason to doubt. And by the way, throughout this video, I'm going to be saying Plein, I think, but I don't know, Plein, I don't really know how to pronounce it. I've seen it a million times, different ways, whatever. Anyway, this lawyer is claiming trademark infringement and defamation from my original video and ordering that I take it down immediately. Now, I'm not unreasonable. I try to be a nice fashion critic. So I've removed that original video out of respect, and what I'm going to do here is give you an updated version of that original video with some new additional context now that we're all on the same page thanks to this legal document I was sent. Now, before we get going, I just want to make one thing very clear. I am a fashion nerd and fashion critic. Everything stated in this video is merely my opinion as a critic and expert, unless otherwise noted with sources. For example, if I were to say that this shirt by Plein is aesthetically displeasing and looks like something a racist cop would wear to MMA class, that is merely my opinion and not a statement of fact. If you or anyone else disagrees with me and does not find that shirt to look like merchandise from a Kentucky roadside zoo, that's absolutely great. Even if I, as a fashion expert, would never spend my money on a single thing Plein has ever touched, I have zero problems if you or anyone else would. Buy what you like. Enjoy what you enjoy. I support you. And by the way, me showing that shirt does not infringe on any trademarks because I was offering criticism as I did so. That's called fair use. I don't know what they call it in Italy, but this is the US of A, baby. Okay, with all of that out of the way, let's take a look at my original video that Plein's lawyers ordered me to take down, and we'll just pause along the way as needed. Oh God, you guys. This day had to come eventually. When you're doing fashion criticism, eventually you have to talk about Philipp Plein. Okay, here's where we need to stop. Yeah, we got there real fast, huh? Oh, by the way, I don't know what I was wearing in that original video. I mean, I do know it was Comme des Garçons, but like not good Comme des Garçons, so my apologies. So, it seemed to me that this next part was the one they really didn't like. So instead of showing it and potentially re-traumatizing them, let's just look at the legal order they sent me because they really did their homework here. They helpfully highlighted the parts they objected to. In fact, they transcribed the entire video. You know what that means? It means that Plein likely paid a law firm or transcription service real money to transcribe my entire video, and then paid them to draft this whole document around it. It's incredible. They even put a disclaimer at the end of the email saying that it is forbidden to show this to anyone. Well, here's my disclaimer. After you send it to me, I can show it to whoever I want. Disclaimer over. And by the way, keep in mind, this is just me quoting a document of law that I was sent. And everything I'm about to quote here is opinion rather than fact. I'm sorry, I have a feeling I'm going to be saying that a lot. Okay, quote. Imagine the worst of all worlds, not just a thief, but a narcissist and a cutthroat businessman. Okay, that sounds pretty bad, but let me explain here. By thief, I am referring to the fact that Plein is an alleged plagiarist, as has been outlined by all of these sources. You don't have to believe me, just read them and decide for yourselves. Links are also in the description. Narcissist is an opinion. I am not a mental health professional, nor have I ever purported to be one. It's not a diagnosis, and I don't think anyone would believe it was. All I can say is that in my very untrained opinion, Plein demonstrates behavior that, in my opinion, reads as narcissistic. Watch the rest of the video, and you can be the judge. A cutthroat businessman. I'm not even sure if I need to defend this. Of course, he's a businessman. As an anti-capitalist, I would argue that anyone who becomes as successful as him is cutthroat by definition. But even if you disagree there, you can see he's clearly litigious to some degree and willing to go to many lengths to protect and grow his business. Just my opinion. Again, watch the rest of the video and you can decide. Okay, let's keep reading this legal document I was sent. Quote, At his core, he's really just a little shit stain. He's an oozing blackhead on the face of fashion when that's so awful you can't help but stare straight at it. They actually misquoted, it's supposed to be one that's so awful, but I'll forgive it. I know I sound like a broken record here, but this is clearly all opinion. Unless they're really trying to argue that I was saying he's a literal shit stain, but at that point he wouldn't be human and therefore would be unable to sue. So which is it, lawyer dudes? Anyway, I'm a fashion critic. I'm allowed to say that I think he's bad for fashion. That's all there really is to it. Okay, after that large diversion, let's get back to the original video. At this point, he's more of a generalized, nebulous internet personality than he is a designer, like a male Kardashian or Tila Tequila. By the way, remember Tila Tequila? MySpace, my god. For you youngins, it was basically like Facebook. And for you even more youngins, Facebook is basically like Instagram. And for you youngest youngins, Instagram is basically TikTok. Anyway, Tila Tequila's a white supremacist now. Let's move on. Philipp Plein is most famous for being famous, throwing lavish parties, posing his runway shows, and posting shirtless photos with his luxury cars. He's like a straight guy's idea of what women want. Soulless and vapid and muscle-bound and absurdly wealthy. But like I said, we have to talk about him. Why? Because he is continuingly, persistently, bafflingly successful. So, cue up your Michael Jackson popcorn gifts in the comments and let's do this thing. Believe it or not, I do have other interests outside of clothes. I know that's hard to believe given my copious amounts of drip, but here we are. For example, I really like watching movies. In my younger years, I may have even called myself a cinephile, but now as an adult, I realize that word is way too close to pedophile to describe yourself as safely. Anyway, in the film world, there's this German director called Uwe Boll. He's famous for being a troll. Like, his movies are absolute complete trash to the point where the Razzies bestowed him with a rare Worst Lifetime Achievement Award. So, in order to get people to give him money to make his movies, he just has to get as much press as he can, good or bad. He needs to keep himself famous enough to have that name value. And so he would lash out, like calling other directors, Michael Bay and Eli Roth, fucking retards, or telling his critics to go fuck their mom. And here I am insulting people on YouTube every week and I'm still poor. If anyone wants to cut me a check, my DMs are very much open. Anyway, most people look at this in horror. I mean, it's clear what he's doing. I don't mean the clutching your pearls type of horror, but more that sheer embarrassment at seeing someone debase themselves in search of some quick headlines. But here's the thing, it works. The dude keeps getting paid to make the literal worst movies on the planet. I mean, the dude made a movie called Auschwitz, which is basically just concentration camp torture porn. And he played an SS officer in it. And again, he's German. There are so many layers to that bag of suck, I don't even know where to begin. Why did I tell you that story? Because I'm a long-winded dumbass who doesn't respect your time? Possibly. But also because I see some very strong similarities between Uwe Boll and another German creative. Yep, the one and only Philipp Plein. And trust me, we're gonna get to some wild shit. Our friend the Philly Cheesesteak is basically a never-ending series of foot-and-mouth situations and cringeworthy acts and statements of epic proportions. Lawsuits, co-opting racial justice movements, disrespecting the dead, generalized shit fuckery, and more are just around the corner. But I really only know Plein from this unceasing parade of embarrassing news stories, which basically make him look like a complete clown. As if his clothes didn't already do that enough. Sick burn, oh my god, roasted. Great content, bro. Thanks, internet stranger. But in order to get to a place where people are writing about you at all, you have to actually do something. And he does, believe it or not, actually make clothes that lots of stores stock, and even more surprisingly, people buy them. Oh, by the way, they really don't like me using Plein's branding, even though this is criticism and therefore fair use. So I disagree with their assertion, but out of respect, I'll try not to use it. For example, this is not Philipp Plein's logo. It's one that I made. And this isn't Plein's shirt. It's one that I designed. But they both look really ugly, right? Weird how these aesthetics are just really, really bad. in my opinion. Anyway, anywhere in the video where Plein's clothes or branding appear, I'll try to replace them with my slightly similar, but still very ugly ones. I mean, you can also buy luxury ice cubes that cost $350, so clearly not everything that people spend stacks on is actually worthwhile, but still, the concept is perplexing. So I have to assume he wasn't always this way. At some point, he must have actually been creating things that were worthwhile, right? I mean, even Uwe Boll started out making sometimes okay movies to create his reputation before things went totally down the drain. I had to find out where this guy came from, and down the rabbit hole I went. Or should I say, doggy hole. That's called foreshadowing, guys, try to keep up. But here's the thing, it never really got any better the further back I went. He's been pretty craven and materialistic from the start. His first foray into creative design was when he was in law school and saw an opening in a pretty weird market: dog beds. This in and of itself shows that Plein couldn't care less about fashion. He cares about what will sell. He looks for markets where he sees a space for himself and moves aggressively to fill them. Just like he moved to aggressively fill his mansion with a solid gold arcade. He's like a German Donald Trump, for fuck's sake. The dog beds led to furniture more generally, and he found a niche creating tables made out of exotic animal skins. Clearly tasteless right from the start. And you know that psychopaths often start off by killing animals before people? Not trying to make any insinuations here, but wouldn't be surprised if this dude had a serial killer dungeon in that outrageously garish house of his. It's a joke, just a joke, no need to get all defensive and sue me, okay? Anyway, he ended up making some bags out of his leftover scraps from the furniture, and they apparently sold out. That's how he got into fashion, really. Some people just trip and realize they've fallen into a pit of money, and it's kind of infuriating, honestly. The bags led to him moving into that market, and before long, he was buying military jackets at wholesale and covering them in Swarovski crystals. That was his start in apparel. He openly admits he would buy the jackets in bulk, by the kilo, and then sell them for hundreds. It's like on the one hand you've got these craftsmen like Alexander McQueen, and on the other you've got this guy who has the craftsmanship of Bowser from Mario. That is to say none, that shit would get lit on fire with his dragon breath and the fabrics would get caught on his spiky spine and shit. It wouldn't be good. Finally, we're at another part they objected to. Quote, "So, what I'm saying is that Plein sucks in actually making clothes." Again, misquoted, it should be "at making clothes." Sorry to do this again, but I am a fashion critic, and this is merely my opinion as a fashion critic. Clearly, Plein can physically make clothes, but from an aesthetic perspective, my opinion is that he sucks at it. Let's continue. So from day one, there was a clear philosophy. More, money, money, money. The design was secondary. Not even secondary, it wasn't even on the menu. He wanted to make the most expensive looking stuff and charge as much as possible for it. Who was buying the things? Well, in the beginning, it was Russia. Apparently, the nouveau riche of the country had an appetite for extravagant bling that the rest of the world couldn't stomach. And eventually, China caught on as well. And it's truly like any time there's a product that doesn't even make sense existing, and you ask yourself, why? The answer is pretty much always Asia. Edible iPhone case? Asia. USB leg warmer? Asia. Vagina panties? Asia. And also America now, I'm gonna get me a pair of those. So Phil was making money, but he also kind of hit a wall. If he wanted to break into Western fashion markets, he had to build a reputation within fashion. So what did he do? Well, he started doing runway shows that were more like X Games / arena rock show hybrids and paid celebrities to show up. Monster truck fashion shows attended by Snoop Dogg and Lindsay Lohan. Quote, "Yeah, that'll get you some press even if the clothes suck." Wow, they really don't like me saying the clothes suck. Let's just finish repeating this over and over, and we'll just use a text graphic instead. So here you go. And I get it. If I were a fashion editor and I got an invitation, I would go to that party every damn time, even if the clothes look like affliction merch. And Philippe did have money on hand. So what did he do? Well, buy himself ads in respected fashion magazines. Doesn't everyone do that? Well, yeah, but he's also openly admitted that if he's paying for big splashy ads, he expects them to write actual stories about his brand as well. And that, kiddos, is called unethical journalism. Paging Miss Wintour. Welcome to fashion. So I think we're pretty much caught up to the modern day. Philipp Plein, much to the mainstream fashion fans' dismay, is a major brand and the designer is rich and famous. But being a con man in a creative field is a perilous thing. The industry is relentlessly focused on the new and on attention, and if you fall out of the spotlight, you risk losing everything entirely. So if you're a person who is particularly shameless, you're willing to do whatever it takes to keep all eyes on you. Plein's tabloid era really picked up steam in 2019 when he received a cease and desist letter from Ferrari. What did the designer do that angered the sports car brand so much? Well, the designer had made an Instagram post in which he placed his brand's newest pair of sneakers on top of his own Ferrari 812. Again, I'm clearly not in his target market, because if that showed up in an ad on my feed, I would click that button where you can say you don't want to see it anymore, and Google would be like, oh, well, tell us why you don't like this content. And I'd say, because I'm not a 14-year-old boy who just watched The Fast and the Furious with my first girlfriend who wouldn't even let me get to second base, thank you very much. So this trashy Ferrari post is the kind of thing that a brand would usually pay for, or at the very least get permission for. Plein was associating the Ferrari brand with his own. And apparently Ferrari found the Philipp Plein brand to be just as distasteful as most right-minded people on Earth do. Ferrari went so far as to say that Plein is associating them with a lifestyle that is totally inconsistent with Ferrari's brand perception, in connection with performers making sexual innuendos and using Ferrari's cars as props in a manner which is per se distasteful. Imagine how awful you have to be as a luxury brand that another luxury brand would slam you this hard. It's like a full-on pro wrestling suplex of a diss. So Philly Seymour Hoffman went on an Instagram rant with such stellar rebuttals as, "My Ferrari, my rules," and "We are still waiting for an official apology from the CEO of Ferrari, Mr. Louis Camilleri, to all his clients, including my brother 50 Cent, who owns and drives Ferrari." And yeah, Plein's online persona basically has the voice of a South Park character. It's like unavoidable. And even more hilariously, when the press reached out to 50 Cent for a comment on his joining the Ferrari fight, he claimed no knowledge and said he had nothing to do with it. 50 Cent coming in with the pile driver. Watch out, Phil, or Vince McMahon might jump in and whack you with a folding chair next. As you can guess, Plein didn't take the post down. I mean, it's people looking at him. Why would he remove it? Now, as a wealthy, shameless businessman himself, he should know not to fight someone with even deeper pockets than he has. But he's not exactly a thinker, and Ferrari sued the hell out of him. So our friend Philippe DeFranco was on the back foot. The press was going even worse for him than he thought. He needed to get people back on his side. And exactly the same as his design process, he decided to look around and see what was popular. And by this point, the Black Lives Matter movement was at its height, shortly after the tragic killing of George Floyd. So he said to Ferrari, "Hey, this is all really silly, right? How about we settle this with me making a donation to Black Lives Matter?" Nice sentiment, huh? Sounds good, right? Well, on its face, sure. But Ferrari saw right through it as A, a naked attempt to pull public favor on his side, B, an opportunity to lose the case while still winning with good press, and C, an effort to turn a lawsuit settlement into a tax-deductible charitable donation. So Ferrari said fuck off and took Philharmonic to court. Once he got there, he quickly got suplexed once again and was chokeslammed with a €300,000 fine, with additional penalties for each post featuring a Ferrari if he didn't remove them. And trust me guys, he posts his Ferraris on Instagram a lot. As of now, the cars are still all over his page, far from deleted, so get ready to read some more Plein headlines in the near future, I guess. Now, let's talk about the fashion. Yes, finally the clothes, the moment we've all been waiting for. Well, actually, as with all things Philipp Plein, the clothes are totally secondary. We are going to talk about a fashion show, and a particularly ill-fated one at that. In February, he held his Fall/Winter 20 runway show. All normal so far. The world was still grieving over the tragic loss of Kobe Bryant, which had happened the previous month. Well, Philbert obviously didn't like that people were paying attention to Bryant instead of him, So he figured that a, tribute was in order. If by tribute you mean pissing on someone's grave, of course. He whipped up a bunch of jerseys in Lakers colors and gave them all the number 24, Kobe's number. Aw, so sweet, right? Well, he also threw up on them with Swarovski crystals and emblazoned his name all over them, so in the end it's pretty clear who the focus is supposed to be on there. Now, is that tasteless? Yeah, obviously. But lots of uber expensive fashion is tasteless. Flaunting that kind of money is in and of itself a gross thing. So I think if that's all it was, it would have probably been forgotten after a few angered comments. But Plein didn't stop there. How could he? It's in his blood to be a shit stain. That is just my personal take. So he also included 2 gold helicopters on stage. You know, the thing that crashed and led to Kobe's death? What's the message there? If yours had been gold, maybe you would have lived? I truly cannot comprehend it. So what was his excuse? Well, he'd already ordered the helicopters 2 months before Kobe died, of course. In what world is that a fitting excuse? Philomena, you had so many options. You could have kept the helicopters and nixed the Kobe jerseys and no one would have ever made the connection. Or you could have done the Kobe, tribute and just thrown those helicopters in a hangar to use next season. You clearly have the cash. But this is a damaged man. Opinion. He only thinks in terms of excess. He had gold helicopters and by God he was gonna use them. But when you revel in excess, you've got to take the punches when people are grossed out by your excessiveness. Are we gonna talk about clothes now? You bet your butt we are. Because I am willing to bet you that every last one of these things could have been forgiven. You've got another objection. Quote, if the clothes were interesting and original, but I don't think any of you will be surprised when I tell you that they are not. Philipp stirred up yet another round of controversy when he recently released a campaign that bears a very, very striking similarity to Dior's blockbuster collaboration with Sean Stussy. Stussy is a legend in the streetwear scene, and Kim Jones brought him into Dior to do maybe one of their most beloved collections ever. Sean used his surfer freehand style to remake the Dior logo in his wavy fashion, and the marketing campaign featured these scrawls in black over a white background. Our friend Ryan Philippe saw that and apparently said, looks cool. Okay, they didn't like this next line one bit. Quote, and immediately went out and did your exact same thing. He just replaced Dior with his own name and the flowers with his trademark skulls. I'm gonna stop calling out the bad transcriptions, I think you get it now, but look, I've got sources alleging plagiarism here. Look. Anyway, I have no idea what Philipp Plein's intent was when he did this. You guys look at the sources, look at the timing, and you decide. All I'll say is that as a critic, I personally think they look really, really shockingly similar. Interesting. The fashion gossip Instagram account Diet Prada lit the fuse, which then exploded all over the internet from high snobiety to hypebeast. As far as I can tell, Plein never responded. He knows as well as anyone that nothing will happen to him unless Dior sues him, and he's probably safe in the assumption that they won't. But that doesn't make it cool, bro. And that was just the most blatant instance of his plagiarism, the one that was so shameless it was bound to be commented on. But basically, his entire oeuvre is lifted from other designers. Okay, wow, we've got a lot of highlighting coming up here, guys. Quote, Alexander Wang has called him out for copying his racetrack idea for a runway show, and he's also been checked for a horrifyingly copying Craig Green's Moncler collection for a bubbly puffer coat of his own, complete with really, really tacky branding. I mean, he had to make it his own somehow, right? He's used teddy bear motifs that are unmistakably inspired by Moschino, a brand designed by Jeremy Scott. My defense is the same as it was. I've got sources. As a critic, they look suspiciously similar to me. You be the judge. But one who has more creativity in a single pube than Plein has in his whole body. He'll do jackets in this over-the-top metalhead font that feels like a step too far into the Vetements zone, a brand that does nihilistic anti-fashion far better than Plein could ever hope. His skull iconography alone reads as far more McQueen to me than it does as signature Plein, which I'm sure is no accident. Quote, and his footwear is on a whole other level. Take a look at these spiky boys. Remind you of anyone? Louboutin, perhaps. Oh yeah, only that absurdly popular luxury shoe that is so iconic it's basically a meme at this point. How can you call yourself a designer and do this? And here's the problem, this stuff is expensive. I am merely making an observation as a critic. I will simply leave you with this. Take a look at this shoe by Louboutin, which to me looks like a very luxurious and expensive shoe, even if it is not my style. Now, take a look at this shoe by Philipp Plein. I find it to be less aesthetically pleasing than the last, although very similar. That's my take. Now, what's yours? Let me know in the comments. And then the document continues, quote, I could maybe forgive it if he was doing like Zara-style stuff where you're listing from the biggest luxury designers and selling it to a different customer base at a lower price. That's still a huge dick move, but at least I understand the mindset behind it. But Philipp over here is charging a metric fuck ton of money for his clothes, a lot of times even more than the brands he's plagiarizing. Those low IQ Louboutin ripoffs we just saw retail price over $1,300. I don't know exactly what he's objecting to, maybe the word plagiarizing. Anyway, Plein is an alleged plagiarist, and his stuff is, in my opinion, expensive. The end. The Vêtement jacket? Over $6,000. And yeah, I get it. It's Russians and Chinese people buying this stuff. But at this point, I don't care. I'll go to the mountains of Russia and knock out Vladimir Putin's son to prove that these clothes are trash.
Opinion.
And here's the worst thing about all of this. I honestly don't know what to do about it, because me making this video is exactly what Philipp Plein wants. He's an attention vampire. He feeds off this stuff. He's probably watching this right now just counting how many times I've said his name as he jerks his micro peenie. Okay, yeah, rude, but that's just genius comedy. No, I am not a doctor and cannot say the true size of his peenie. Come on, you know he's got one. So the only thing that can stop this garbage pale kid of a man is for people to stop giving him money. And I'm only one person. I don't know how to do that. I mean, it'd help if all of you out there didn't buy his stuff either, but I feel like the audience for this video and his clientele are a Venn diagram that does not have much overlap. I wish I could tell you I'm huge in China and Russia, where he's raking in money hand over fist, but I'm guessing my high-octane barrage of jokes and references are a bridge too far for that language barrier. So I guess just spread the word. Tell people he's a leathery jock with a micro dongle who is unable to please anyone, man or woman, because that would be just as honest as his designs. Let me know in the comments what you think of Lil Phil and all the awful things he's done. Take a look at the other video on screen here, subscribe to my channel, like this video, and I'll see you next time. Hey, we made it to the end. Anyway, let me know what y'all think of this. You know, it's funny. I'd always wondered whether Plein or anyone at his company had seen my video. It looks like they hadn't. Until recently, and it's my impression that they really didn't like it. But you know what I don't like? I don't like when rich people in general try to silence critics, especially ones that are infinitesimally smaller than them. That seems pretty rude to me. I mean, I live in the United States, where these things are pretty important to our legal system. Free speech, fair use, all of that good stuff. If you want to really get into the weeds, we could even start talking about slap suits. Legal nerds here are with me here, and I know it. So anyway, like this video, share it, comment, whatever you want to do. Let's show rich and powerful people that trying to silence someone can backfire. It's called the Streisand effect, baby. Let's see what happens.